Hi, I'm Matt McGovern, and this is Inside the Pocket with Coach Gov. So this week I'm going to talk a little bit about mechanics. Specifically, I'd like to highlight the idea of how the lower body and the hip, the driving of the hip, really power the throw for a quarterback. In order for a quarterback to maximize his potential with regard to arm strength or velocity, it's really important to first understand the mechanics of the throw, the biomechanics, the science, if you will, of how to throw a football. So I'm going to highlight the idea of what I call hip slam to really power the throw. And the second thing I want to highlight is the sequence of movements that must take place in order for the arm to meet its maximum potential. Let's take a look at DeAndre Francois, Florida State's quarterback, in their game from this past weekend against Alabama, at how he utilizes his hip slam to maximize his arm's ability. Let's take a look at the play. I'll run through once for you. But let's really look at Francois from this angle. So the first thing we want to highlight is the idea of his kinetic sequence. So you see he takes his stride foot, lands on the toe, and just as he's landing on the toe, that's the time that his hands are separating and he's pulling his arms apart in what I call the rev. So at that moment, by the time his foot lands, the next move is going to be his hip slam. So you take a look at his right hip, and right there, bang, the hip goes. Now that hip drive is going to essentially slingshot his arm forward, and that's what you see coming out of the ball coming out of his hand. So again, playing through, if you watch, the first thing that takes place is his stride. As he's just landing his toe, that's when you see him start his rev, and then you see that slingshot effect on the throw. Bang, there's the hip slam. Taking a look at that same throw from a different angle, you can see he sprints to his right and then he sets up. Now this is a good look at it. Okay, you're going to see his body is extremely what I call quiet. Very little excess movement. Okay, and again, that if the body was thought of as a giant human whip, you can see that slingshot effect, just like the cracking of a whip, as is the way that his arm functions, because he's able to stride his front stride toe out there, pointing the toe where it wants to go. So you see he sets his GPS foot, and at that moment he's landing on his toe. The reason that's important is because his body weight then is able to stay back. As soon as his toe lands, he engages his hip slam, which means bang, his hip will close 90 degrees. At the same time that he slams his hip, his heel is coming down on the ground so that his body weight does not fall forward. That keeps all of his weight back, and the power now works upward through his body, through his core, and then eventually slingshots out of his arm. So again, you look at that sequence of his movements and how important that is. Stride takes place as soon as the toe touches, bang, hip slam, and what I call the break is the heel coming down, and now the rev, race squeeze, and you see the extension of his arm. Essentially, the body powers the throw. If you kind of can envision an airplane propeller, the propellers are just going. That's his arms. But the power, the engine, that's the lower half. That's the hip slam accompanied by the break, which is his heel coming down, keeping his body weight back and allowing the power to travel upward through the body and eventually leaving the arm, maximizing what his arm's potential can do. So what looks like a strong arm is really the usage of the kinetic chain properly in the sequence. For young quarterbacks out there, just remember, understanding your mechanics is the key to your success. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Inside the Pocket with Coach Gov.